Hey everyone, Chris Carter here for the North Shore Drive podcast from the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette. It's Monday, and that means it's game day. The Steelers take on the Giants tonight at Acrisure Stadium. We get you ready, but first we look at Russell Wilson and the opportunity that he has to show this offense can consistently put up points. What do they have to do that? Also, what happened to the AFC North this weekend? And your final keys to the game here on the North Shore Drive podcast. Chris Carter with Ray Fittipaldo. Let's get into it. You are now listening to the North Shore Drive Podcast, a show on all things Pittsburgh sports from the writers of the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette, hosted by Christopher Carter. Hello and welcome to the North Shore Drive Podcast from the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette. I'm your host, Chris Carter, joined today by one of our great Steelers beat writers, Ray Fittipaldo. And as always, you can find this show on all your favorite podcasting apps and on YouTube every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. Like this video if you enjoy. Subscribe to this channel to get our Monday, Wednesday, Friday episodes, as well as our daily content that comes out from all of our Pittsburgh sports writers here at the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette. And as always, this show is brought to you by Edgar Snyder Associates. Whether you're injured in a car accident or hurt on the job, Edgar Snyder Associates has helped injury victims for over 40 years recover more than $2 billion on their behalf. If you or a loved one have been seriously injured in an accident, call 1-800-94-EDGAR or visit www.edgarsnyder.com for a free consultation. And remember, there's never a fee unless they get money for you. Ray, let's talk about this Steelers team. I want to focus on this offense at first because this is an offense that's now scored 30 points in back-to-back games. It's been a long time since that had happened, but Russell Wilson did it a bit differently last week. He distributed the football. Van Jefferson caught his first touchdown. George Pickens caught his first touchdown. They were able to hit the ball further down the field. They were throwing deeper down the field on play action passes that helped open up the run game. Najee Harris has had 2 straight games of rushing over 100 yards. I think there's some good signs for this Steelers offense. And this Giants defense, while not, they're not immaculate, they're not bottom of the middle, even though the Giants themselves aren't good. They do boast Dexter Lawrence, who leads the NFL in sacks with 9. Brian Burns, I think, is expected to play. He's another really talented guy up front, and they have other weapons here. What do you need to see out of the offense in this game, Ray, to show that, hey, they are consistently making consistent improvements and this offense could be headed in a very positive way?
Yeah, I mean, Chris, if you look at the last 2 games, and I know Justin played one and Russ played the other, but the thing that pops out to me is they were much better after halftime. And I wrote about this over the weekend. Steelers are one of the best second-half offenses in the NFL. Only the Ravens have scored more after halftime. Now, listen, I understand the defense set them up with turnovers and a lot of short fields, but the point is they're converting those turnovers into touchdowns more recently, and that's why they're up around 15 points per game after halftime. So for me, what I want to see, Chris, is I want to see that 60-minute execution. I want to see the run game going in the first half, not just the second half. I want to see those big plays down the field in the first quarter, not just the third and fourth quarter. So to me, that's the next evolution of the offense that I think we need to see, for the Steelers to really be hitting on all cylinders. I think they've been really good making adjustments after halftime. Arthur Smith has proven that he can be a really good offensive coordinator once he gets his rhythm going with his quarterbacks. Just start a little bit faster. I know it's been a season-long thing, but they still haven't had it rectified.
They haven't, and I think that's something that you're kind of expecting from Russell Wilson to help you with. That's why you brought him in. That's why he's the veteran quarterback, and this is something you and I talked about the entire time Justin Fields was making plays. The looming shadow that was Russell Wilson's potential return was that he would be a quarterback that can help them be a good offense from start to finish and deliver more complete performances. And you and I talked about it like, hey, last week, he's obviously shaken off the rust. He hadn't played since Christmas the year before, and he missed pretty much all of training camp. He missed the first 6 weeks of the season. It was going to take him a little bit to get it together, but man, he get it together quickly because in the second, third, and fourth quarters, he was throwing the ball all over the place, and Steelers offense looked better than it had all season. So this week, Ray, he needs to be able to show, hey, that first quarter thing, that was just because it was the rust. Now you're going to be able to come in and get things going a little bit faster, not asking for 14 points in the first quarter, but show that you can finish a drive in the first quarter. So I think if you can get at least one first quarter touchdown, possess the ball well for most of the first half, and maybe get out of the first half with at least 14 points in total or 17 points or something, just something to show like, hey, this is not going to be a year-long thing. This has just been the offense naturally growing as it's dealt with injuries, young players, and everything else. And now with Russell Wilson, he can help mitigate all those other problems.
Yeah, I mean, listen, what Mike Tomlin always talks about is complementary football. And, the Steelers' defense, even with the offense being really inconsistent for the first 7 games of the season, they're a top 10 a top 10 defense in yards allowed, points allowed, and turnovers created. They're actually number 2 in the league in scoring defense. Think about how much better they can be, Chris, if the offense actually scored some points in the first halves of these games. I mean, think about them teeing off on quarterbacks in the second half. Why they've been able to, be a shutdown defense is because you get that little lead in the second half, or you get a 2-score lead, and then you're able to dictate, right? The offense can't keep you off balance. You can get after the quarterback a little bit more. Those instances really have been few and far between. Maybe a couple games, fourth quarter, they've been able to tee off. But, if they get a lead early, I think they can start doing that earlier. That's just going to make the defense all that much better. So the defense, other than some miscommunication, some errors, some big plays, against the Colts, and then again in the second half against the Cowboys, I think overall it's been really impressive. But I think how much more impressive can they be if the offense actually scored some points for them earlier in games?
I agree, and that's kind of what this team was designed to be like, right? Like the idea version of this Steelers team is an offense that isn't elite, but does give them a chance for the elite defense to really take over games, not just win games. And I think that's the thing that we've seen for years now is the Steelers defense has just won the games because the offense wasn't giving them enough, or the offense was doing just enough to get them over the hump. But imagine a team that could put you behind the 8 ball with his offense and say, okay, we're having a good day here. Now you're down, 10 points, 14 points. And now you got to come back against this defense that's locked in and playing really well. And you can mix that kind of offensive performance with some of the elite defensive showings that we've seen. That could have the makings to really put even good teams in some tough spots, which is what could make this Steelers team competitive down the stretch in the AFC playoffs, which is what ultimately everyone's been waiting to see. Can the Steelers break their streak of 7 seasons without a playoff win? That is the key to finding the balance here. We'll talk about their path to get there, being in the AFC North, because Ray, I talked about this, but they are through a little under half their season, and they got 2 more non-AFC North divisional games before they start the gauntlet that is the AFC North going forward. But there was some key action that went down in the AFC North this weekend. I want to talk about those games with you next, how that sets up what the Steelers can do going into the bye, and where the Steelers stand in this AFC North division race as they are currently. They are in first place. We'll talk about that next here on the North Shore Drive podcast from the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette. Chris Carter, Ray Fittipaldo, stick with us. We'll be right back. But first, I want to remind you, this show is brought to you by Edgar Snyder Associates. If you're injured in an accident, you're probably wondering what's next. Well, for over 40 years, Edgar Snyder Associates has helped injury victims answer that very question, whether it's gathering evidence, collecting medical records, or dealing with the insurance companies. Edgar Snyder Associates has helped over 75,000 people handle the what's next question. Call 1-800-94-EDGAR or visit www.edgarsnyder.com for a free consultation. And remember, there's never a fee unless they get money for you. We're back here in the North Shore Drive podcast for the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette. Chris Carter here with Ray Fittipaldo. Let's look at what happened in the AFC North while the Steelers were awaiting their Monday night opponent. The Ravens played the Browns in Cleveland in a game that I thought the Ravens were going to run away with because Jameis Winston was starting. Deshaun Watson's out. They've traded away Amari Cooper. The Browns are down and out. They were 1-6. The Ravens are 5-2. The Ravens are on a roll. And that's not what happened at all, Ray. The Browns won at home 29-24. Jameis Winston goes off in this game, throwing 3 touchdowns, no interceptions for over 334 yards. Cedric Tillman gets 2 touchdown receptions, and everyone's looking around like, wait, what happened here? Ray, was this a case where you think the Browns might have woken up, or did the Ravens just drop a major opportunity to keep up pace with the Steelers in this game? Because Lamar Jackson, 2 touchdowns, no interceptions, but certainly major questions after dropping a game to a 1-6 team.
Yeah, I mean, listen, when you change quarterbacks, I think a lot of times if that guy plays well, and Jameis played pretty well yesterday, you're going to get that little extra juice from your teammates, right? It's a new aura, it's a new environment, and then, I thought the Browns responded really well there. But if you look at it, Chris, Kyle Hamilton had that game won. Would be talking about a completely, different story this morning if he didn't drop that interception. So, it's a situation where, the Ravens kind of have been this team this year. They lost to the Raiders. Now they've lost to the Browns. I still think they're the class of the AFC North, but, how many games can you drop to inferior teams and expect to stay on top of the division? That's why this is a really, really big opportunity for the Steelers on Monday Night Football. If they can beat the Giants, they'll be 6-2, a game lead going into the second half of the season. And, that's really ideal territory if you're the Steelers.
No, I agree there too. The Ravens, I do feel like in this game, the Browns came out and they did some really good things. There were some impressive throws by Jameis Winston. But by my count, I was watching this game, just because I wanted to keep an eye on this one. I counted at least 5 dropped interceptions by the Ravens secondary, and that Ravens secondary has been a major topic this season as far as they're not as great as they have been in recent years. Kyle Hamilton also even dropped one of those interceptions, and it was right after he dropped that last interception that they let Cedric Tillman blow right by that secondary for the game-winning touchdown that the Browns got late in this game. That certainly, I think, could be a problem if the Ravens let it continue. But like you said, the Ravens are still a major contender. They beat the snot out of the Bills, who right now look like they're one of the best teams in the NFL, not just the AFC. But this is where I think the Steelers, they might not be as far behind in the AFC North as people made them out to be. I mean, literally, they're ahead of the AFC North because they're in the first in the AFC North. But the Browns, I have to think that, they got a little bit of supercharged from the emotion, and they had a home game after Deshaun Watson's been out and Jameis Winston, their backs up against the wall. But I didn't think they played particularly very well. I thought they played solid. But I'd be interested to see if Winston can keep up consistent good play, because that's really been his problem his whole career. He's had plenty of really good games, just equally bad games on the other flip side of it. But while the Ravens are now 5-3 and the Browns are still in last place at 2-6, right in between them are the Cincinnati Bengals, who got smoked at home by the Philadelphia Eagles. They fell to 3-5 after losing 37-17. Joe Burrow started off hot, got a touchdown in the first quarter. Jamar Chase. I don't know what you, Ray. I haven't studied the Bengals intensively, but I seem to feel like every time they play, even when they lose or whether they lose or win, their offense is like the opposite of the Steelers. They come out red hot, they score fast, and then they just disappear as the game goes on. They scored 7 points in the first quarter, 10 points in the first 15 minutes or first 20 minutes of play, and then they only got one single touchdown while the Eagles just ran up the score on them.
Yeah, I mean, listen, they've been banged up. T. Higgins hasn't been right all season long. I don't know if I expected Joe Mixon to be that much of a loss for them.
Yeah.
And listen, I understand the line's not that good. The line is an issue. This happens, Chris. You got to pay a quarterback. You got to pay Jamar Chase. You don't have enough money to go around to fortify every single position unit on your football team. So right now they're suffering with a very mediocre to below average offensive line. Their running game really isn't the same since Joe Mixon left. And you mentioned that they're just not scoring enough points to win. I mean, 17 points at home isn't going to be enough to win a football game most every week. I don't care who you're playing.
How many times have we talked about that with the Steelers doing that?
Yeah, and the Bengals don't have a defense like the Steelers have, so it's not even that much, of an argument. So I heard a clip yesterday of Joe Burrow after the game, basically said, "Hey, don't panic. We go 7-2 down the stretch. We'll be 10-7. That's usually enough to get in." Yeah, that's right. But you got 2 games against the Steelers.
Mm-hmm.
I still think they have 1 more against the Ravens,
Mm-hmm.
and they got a couple other tough games. So 7-2 sounds like it's doable, but when you've been playing offense the way they've been playing offense, I don't know if anyone in Cincinnati can feel really comfortable about bouncing back and making the playoffs.
And when they're playing defense the way they are, you think about the Steelers matchup in this game, the Eagles just ran over them. Saquon Barkley over 100 yards, Jalen Hurts 3 rushing touchdowns. That allowed them to set up the balance. The Steelers, they're going to want to run the ball all over them, and I think that's going to be certainly a factor. And like you said, you look at the Bengals' schedule down the stretch. They get the Raiders at home this next week, but then they're at the Ravens, they're at the Chargers, they play the Steelers, they get to play at the Cowboys, they still have to play the Browns, which, by the way, even though they won the last one, the Browns, even when the Browns have been terrible, have been like a kryptonite to the Bengals, even when they've been very good. They get the Broncos, who aren't exactly slouches right now. The Broncos are actually right in the AFC playoff race. I think they're 5-3 right with the Ravens. And by the way, like you said, they get to play the Steelers in Pittsburgh to end the season. So the Bengals are not this team that have come out and figured everything out like a lot of people assume they are. And in fact, you look at their 8 games, they're 3-5. Their 3 wins are the Panthers, the Giants, and the Browns. Those are 3 games that they were supposed to have easily, but they've lost to the Patriots, they've lost to the Chiefs, they've lost to the Commanders, they've lost to the Ravens and the Eagles so far. They don't have a signature win yet, whereas the Steelers, you can at least say, hey, the Falcons are a good team. They beat the Broncos, and they've figured some things out. The way they beat up on the Raiders and the Jets, those have been encouraging wins. And not that there's a BCS system that's going to rank these teams based off of it, but I think that if you're the Steelers, you have to be encouraged by where you're at 5-2 and how you've gotten to 5-2, and they need to get 6-2 tonight. But where you're at versus where the Browns, Ravens, and Bengals are at, and this second half schedule don't look nearly as impossibly daunting as it did when we were talking about it when they released the schedule back in May.
Yeah, Chris, that's why this game against the Giants tonight is so important. You get to 6-2, and you're really separated from those teams like the Bengals, the Chargers, the Broncos, the Colts, all those teams that are really going to be fighting for the 6th and the 7th seeds in the AFC. That's where the Steelers have been the last couple of years when they've made the playoffs. You don't want to be there. You don't want to go on the road in the first round and have to play a team like the Ravens or the Chiefs or the Bills, if the Bills keep doing well. You want to set yourself up, probably like a 4 or 5 seed at the worst. Hey, listen, if the Ravens keep stumbling and if the Steelers keep improving, maybe you could actually get a 2 or a 3 seed. And that would be, territory that the Steelers haven't been in since 2020. And really by the end of that season, they were a shell of the team that started 11-0. That was the team that lost to the Browns at home. So just give yourself a chance, get that higher seed, get a home game. And then that makes winning that elusive playoff game all that easier.
If they were to win tonight, they would be 6-2. Technically, because of tiebreakers, again, it's impossible to say who's where in a playoff race through 8 games. But technically, they would be the 3 seed at that point because of tiebreakers. That would match them up with, as the things would look now, be 5-3 Ravens in Pittsburgh. Which I think that if you had the Ravens coming to town for a playoff game, I think the Steelers would take that. Versus going to Buffalo to have to face Josh Allen in his stadium, or going to Patrick Mahomes to face his stadium and face him in Arrowhead. That could get you a much better chance to start from in the playoffs. But again, to get to that point, you got to win games like these and get a game up on the Ravens while you can. We'll talk about how they do that in this game in just a minute here on the North Shore Drive podcast from the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette. Chris Carter, Ray Fittipaldo. Stick with us. We'll finish our preview and our big keys for the Steelers to beat the New York Giants tonight at Acrisure Stadium on Monday Night Football. But first, I want to remind you this show is also brought to you by Savinas, Kane, and Gallucci. They're your mesothelioma and asbestos lawyers with over 85 years of experience. Call them now for a free consultation. That's Savinas, Kane, and Gallucci. We're also brought to you by Moon Township Honda, where you can get your new Honda vehicle at 5802 University Boulevard in Moon Township, Pennsylvania, or visit their website, moonhonda.com, to see all the options available. Here's a message from our friends at Moon Township Honda.
To build the Honda CR-V Hybrid, who took everything you love about the CR-V and kicked it up a notch with greater power for a CR-V unlike any before. Adventure confidently with Honda, Car and Driver's most awarded brand in 10 Best history. The CR-V and CR-V Hybrid, part of the Honda line of rugged vehicles. Visit your local Honda dealer where new vehicles are arriving daily. Buy online or reserve from select Honda dealers.
We're back here on the North Shore Drive podcast on the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette. Chris Carter, Ray Fittipaldo. Ray, let's look closer at this specific football game. The Steelers face a Giants team that has struggled themselves. Right now, they sit at 2-5, third from last in the NFC playoff race. They're pretty much out of it when it comes to things, but they still have some things about them the Steelers have to watch out for. Mike Tomlin spent a lot of time talking about Daniel Jones and what he can do with his legs, but he also talked about on defense, they have Dexter Lawrence, who leads the NFL with 9 sacks from the defensive tackle positions, which is really impressive here. Ray, if you had to name 2 key factors in this game the Steelers have to lock in on and make sure they execute, what are those 2 things?
Yeah, don't let Dexter Lawrence be a game wrecker, whether that's, with him rushing the quarterback or, being a big factor in the run game. It's a big week for Ryan McCollum, but it's also a big week for Isaac Seumalo and Mason McCormick too. Let's face it, they're not going to leave Ryan McCollum on an island against Dexter Lawrence.
No.
So, they're going to double team him. They're going to make sure he doesn't, become a factor. And then if I had to pick, that's number one, obviously. If I had to pick a second thing, I would just say more explosive plays down the football field. It's not a bad defense. I think when you look at the Giants team, I think their quarterback situation, their inability to consistently score is really the reason why they're a bad football team. Their defense isn't bad overall. So, run the ball, set up play action, and hit some of those shots down the field, just like you did against the Jets. Get Pickens involved, get Freiermuth involved. If they do that, Chris, honestly, this is a game that they should win by 10 points or more. So we'll see how it unfolds. But for me, those are my 2 biggest keys to the football game.
I agree with that sentiment. I think a lot of this does depend on the offense getting in rhythm, and the person that I look at as the person who can knock it off this most rhythm is Dexter Lawrence. Like you said, Ryan McCollum's going to need help. Zach Frazier's not going to be available this game, and the Steelers, they have done well with running the football, and they've been well with keeping Russell Wilson clean in the last game. Yes, he had to move a little bit, but the one thing that I think could be really rough on Russell Wilson is if he's getting A-gap pressure consistently in the game. Russell Wilson is not a tall quarterback. That's like the one thing that he has going against him physically that I think really shines through. And if you allow a guy to just get through the line every time and force him to have to be on the move every play, that's going to put him in some tough situations that could make him a little bit more predictable to face if you're the Giants. And so you got to limit them and let him control the pocket, give him something to do. But also, on the other side of it, setting up Najee Harris and Jaylen Warren to be able to run the ball. Cordero Patterson not expected to play in this game. He's out for the game per the Steelers PR. So, though you wanted to get those 2 guys going, and you want to strike that balance. Again, this offense isn't going to be just about Russell Wilson, throwing the ball around. It's not going to be just about him hitting George Pickens or even just Pat Freiermuth. It's going to be about all the playmakers getting involved in the offense, which is something we saw last week. Darnell Washington had multiple catches. Pat Freiermuth had multiple catches. Van Jefferson caught a touchdown. George Pickens caught a touchdown. That's what the Steelers want to be. They want to be a team that can hit you in different places based off of where your defense is lining up and the weaknesses that you're giving naturally in your defensive scheme. And to get to that point, they need to limit Dexter Lawrence. I agree with you. That is a major key in this game. Defensively, they have to make Daniel Jones be an elite passer in this game. If Daniel Jones threads the needle and throws some amazing passes into double coverage that are just pinpoint throws, God bless him. But that's what you have to force him to be in this game. You cannot let him get open looks like you did for Joe Flacco and Anthony Richardson in that Colts game, like you did for Dak Prescott at different points of the Cowboys game. This needs to be a week where, hey, they're not running the football on you, and you're controlling the line of scrimmage. And so Daniel Jones, if he's dropping back and making great on-time rhythm throws that are just precise right into the passing window, good for him. But that's not been his career. That's not been his MO. You got to force him to be that quarterback in this game. If they do that, I think they're gonna give themselves several turnover opportunities in this game.
Yeah, and don't let the Giants stay in the game by Daniel Jones scrambling for 20, 30-yard
Yes.
runs. I mean, we've seen him do that throughout his career. That's actually probably what he does better than anything right now, and that's not good for him. He's in year 4 or 5 in the NFL. He's got to develop more as a passer, but the guy's a really good athlete. So you got to have integrity in your rush lanes, and you can't let him get out of the pocket. And going back to the offense one more time, talking about setting up some of those shots down the field, Najee Harris has been really good, but I really think between the tackles might not be there this week because of Lawrence. So maybe this is the game that Jaylen Warren breaks out a little bit and get on the edges, get his speed, get his big playability involved a little bit more. We really haven't seen that this year. He's been really good in pass protection, had one nice catch and run last week for a first down, but I'm kind of waiting for the Jaylen Warren breakout running game, and this might be the game for it to happen.
That's a very good perspective there. The Steelers have been running the pitch a lot this year, the toss to get out wide, and to fans' dismay. It's becoming the jet sweep of this year. A lot of people complain, even though Najee Harris does have a 36-yard touchdown off of one of those toss plays. That does seem like an opportunity where, hey, if they can get the right matchups, Jaylen Warren in space, get his speed going out there, that could lead to some big opportunities there. We'll see if that's something that does click for the Steelers. But Ray, without further ado, tell us how you see this game playing out, what you see as the turning point that decides this game, and your final score winner here for Steelers-Giants on Monday Night Football.
Yeah, I mean, the Steelers haven't lost at home on Monday Night Football since 1991. That team, the New York Giants, I don't think it happens again, Chris. I think the Steelers get it done. I think it's going to be a little bit closer than people might think it's going to be. I'm going to go Steelers 23, defense shuts them down, though, Giants 13.
Okay, I can see that there. I'm gonna give a little bit different here. I'm gonna say close to the differential, but I'm gonna say 31-16. I think that the Giants get a few drives so they get in field goal range, but they aren't able to punch it. So a lot of field goals for the G-men. They're able to put some points on the board. But I think that I think like you said, like what we've been talking about, the Steelers offense needs to get going. And I think the Steelers offense does get going early. It gives them a lead. And then eventually in that mid-third quarter, late third quarter, you see that Daniel Jones is going to feel the pressure to need to try to keep up or make a big play. And then that's when he's going to throw that pass that's intercepted by Dante Jackson, or he holds on the ball just a little too long, and TJ Watt or Keanu Benton's going to sack him, force a fumble, and the Steelers get it, and they get a short field. And then that's where the Steelers take advantage. But both of us have the Steelers winning against the Giants, advancing to 6-2. We will see if they live up to those predictions tonight on Monday Night Football at Acrisure Stadium. Be sure to check out all of our coverage of that at the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette by reading our work at post-gazette.com. And remember, after the game, we'll have our post-game talk with Ray and Jerry talking about what happened in this Steelers game. And of course, we'll have our Wednesday episode of the North Shore Drive podcast, kind of taking what happened on Monday night. What did Tomlin say Tuesday? And where are the Steelers at heading into their bye and less than a week away from the trade deadline? With the Steelers make any moves? We'll cover all that as things continue, but be sure to check us out tonight after the Steelers game here at the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette. From Chris Carter, Ray Fittipaldo, thanks again for tuning into the North Shore Drive podcast. Remember, if you like this show, subscribe to this YouTube channel or on your favorite podcasting app. We are a Monday, Wednesday, Friday show, but we have daily content that comes out from all of our sports writers here at the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette, covering all things sports. We'll see you here again later tonight after the game with Ray and Jerry breaking down what happened. We'll see you here on the North Shore Drive podcast. Thank you for tuning in to another episode of the North Shore Drive podcast from the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette. If you watch this video on YouTube, please like the video and subscribe to our channel. For all the sports coverage from the Post-Gazette that we have to offer, visit post-gazette.com.